Holy crap, I made it to Maryland night.
You made it to Maryland night.
I'm so excited. Oh my God. How are y'all doing, number one?
Good. How are you?
Because y'all know how I'm doing.
That's right.
Busting at the freaking seams for tonight's episode. I have been calling y'all nonstop for like the last 2 months. Like, okay, it's coming. Here we go.
This is how excited he is. He didn't even start with saying, "Welcome to Everything."
Yes,
Paranormal.
sorry. Welcome to Everything.
I'm Shelley Pruitt. These are my partners in Paranormal, Mr. Ryan Roberts and Mr. Blake Smith. And Marilyn Monroe is obviously who we are talking about tonight.
Yes.
And Blake has, I think this has been an every night phone call for at least the past 2.5 weeks about Marilyn.
At least.
Mm-hmm.
At least.
And you've been working on it for 2 to 3 weeks prior to that. So you have run down some rabbit holes that I'm very interested in either running with you or pulling you back on.
Okay. Well, without any further ado, I've got to jump into this because I've got so much information I got to get to tonight. I want to get to the end of it so that we can discuss at the end of this as well. But before we start, I want to say, I feel it in my heart to say, any viewers, listeners out there, this might possibly be a triggering episode. We are going to be talking about someone who potentially has taken their life. So please know that if you're having those feelings, there is help and there is no shame in reaching out for help. But I do want people to know that up front. I just feel compelled to say that. So let's get to Marilyn. So when I first came to y'all and I was like, I want to talk about Marilyn. 60 years later, it's coming up in August. I wanted to talk about everything. I want to talk about her life. I want to talk about her death. And then Shelley was like, reel it in just a little there, boy.
I'm like, you don't have an 8-hour podcast.
Yeah, that's a lot to cover.
And that's about how long I would have to talk about all of it. But slowly but surely, over a little bit, it's been narrowing down. And I kind of realized that talking about so much about her early life and everything would be a real disservice to what I wanted to cover tonight. For me personally, Marilyn's been my passion. She's been the subject that I have studied for like 15 years approximately. I mean, her moves, her body, her convictions, her mannerisms, there's something about her.
You got a tattoo of her, for God's sakes.
I do. I have a tattoo of her right here. But because Marilyn is such a fascinating person, but she's also extremely dynamic. And that's what a lot of people get wrong about her, is they think that she's just the dumb blonde. You know, to understand Marilyn, you have to understand that, yes, on one hand, you have Marilyn Monroe, this woman that oozes sexuality and womanhood. But on the other hand, you have Norma Jean, who's this young girl that in Marilyn's mind was abandoned and unloved. I mean, that's how she talks about her childhood. But my biggest thing in studying her for as long as I have is who was the woman that transformed herself into Marilyn Monroe. That's always my biggest question. She was unlike any other woman on this planet. She had a body unlike any other woman on this planet, and she knew how to use that body, and forcing us to notice her. And she was well before her time. She did. She was
the it factor.
Well before her time. But one of the things I've always wondered about her is how much of her success was pure talent and how much of it was the carefully chosen embraces of powerful men. Because let's face it, she did. She embraced some very powerful men.
Absolutely.
So
now, I had a feeling they don't have any problem embracing her right back either.
No, they didn't. But she was smart.
Neither would I.
She was smart in the choices of men that she linked herself to.
Was she?
Well, I guess we'll come to find out. But the issue with Marilyn that you have to approach with her, with what she divulges, what she says, you have to approach it with skepticism. Because Marilyn Monroe, the sex symbol, she constructed this self-produced image in both public and private that was this mixture of fantasy and fact. And part of that challenge is pulling back those layers to find the woman that's beneath the facade. So that's what we're going to attempt to do tonight. And I'm going to let you know we're focusing on an area of her life that many have delved into, which is the final 3 months of Marilyn's life. So to do that, I've got to get you caught up real quick to the story. So it's no secret Marilyn had affiliated with powerful men. We know that. We've already gone over that. She's been linked to Arthur Miller, Frank Sinatra, the Rat Pack members, Joe DiMaggio, and also JFK and Bob Kennedy. And it's no secret that the latter two, the Kennedy brothers, had their extramarital affairs and their womanizing ways. And Marilyn was one of those trophies. Sorry, she was. There's a lot of debate of whether that actually took place or not, but I think there's a lot more evidence to point to that it did than it didn't. Now, I'm not going to try and put a timeline on JFK and Marilyn's affairs. It's widely debated. The range is anywhere from 1946 to 1960, but I can guarantee you that by 1960 they either knew of each other because of their circles or intimately. We're just going to leave it at that. And some of the things that you need to know with Marilyn's story up to, we're getting to the year 1962. She'd been married 3 times. Each had failed. She was married to Arthur Miller, and that began her file with the FBI and the CIA because his ties to the Communist Party. He ended up being found guilty of contempt of Congress for not wanting to divulge friends' names that had close ties to the Communist Party. Which, like I said, that they really put their eye on her because of that. Also in 1960, you had a new leader, Cuban leader, Fidel Castro. He had risen to power. And JFK had become prime candidate for candidacy and presidency, which we know he goes on to win and all that stuff. But also with that, Frank Sinatra, the singer, was like, hey, I got a chance to gain a powerful friend. And he starts to woo the would-be president by giving him trips to his club, the Cal Neva, out in Lake Tahoe. Now, the Cal Neva was owned by Frank Sinatra and his silent business partner, Shelley and Ryan, you'll love this, Sam Giancana.
Yep.
Chicago Mafia boss. And it's at this establishment, it's reported that through FBI surveillance, these are reports, that there was a deal struck with the Mafia in order for JFK to win the candidacy and the presidency. Hey, you win, we'll help you win. You invade Cuba for us and get the mob-run casinos back up and running because we're losing millions on them. That was allegedly the deal that took place.
And you leave us alone.
And you leave us alone. That was the other thing, too. So it's during JFK's candidacy that they recognize the Marilyn Monroe problem. So that's why I say by 1960, they know of each other. And it was feared that Marilyn's going to start talking about their affairs and spill all these secrets with their pillow talk, quote unquote, that JFK and Marilyn shared, which was about state secrets. And so in 1961, after President Kennedy is elected, we know what happens. The Bay of Pigs, which was one of the worst military operations that the United States ever did.
Almost brought to the brink of World War III.
Yep. And
nuclear missiles were involved. Yes.
Yep. And that was either to oust, overthrow, or assassinate, emphasis on the latter, Fidel Castro. Excuse me. And also between 1960 and 1962, Marilyn's mental health takes a massive decline. August of 1960, she actually had experienced a near-fatal overdose because of a weekend out at Cal Neva Lodge. That's not the last weekend, if you know what the last weekend is in Marilyn's life. That's not the last weekend. This is a year or 2 years prior. And that's where allegedly Joe Kennedy, JFK, Sam Giancana, and Johnny Rosselli, who's another Chicago mobster, he was recruited to help assassinate Fidel, basically had a meeting where they're like, hey, you're going to shut up. You're just going to keep your mouth shut about your affair with JFK. And it didn't go well. She ended up overdosing, which she, recuperated from. Also during that time, like her movie, Let's Make Love, it flopped, even though they used a lot of her affair with her co-star, Yves Montand, in the publicity for that movie. She announces her divorce from Arthur Miller at the end of 1960. She gets a divorce from Arthur Miller at the beginning of 1961. She's filming The Misfits, in which she plays a character, Rosalind, that's written by Arthur Miller, in which he uses the moment to reflect Marilyn's real life. And so filming was torture for her, essentially. I mean, she worked with her husband and then ex-husband. And also right after that, in November 1960, her co-star Clark Gable drops dead of a heart attack. And the public and a lot of people blamed her for that because of her unprofessionalism. So she took a heavy hit with that. So during after her divorce, she starts reaching out to her New York psychoanalyst and was like, what can I do? And she's like, you just need a nice long rest in the hospital. Well, that's not the case. They institutionalize her in the Payne Whitney psychiatric clinic. That's the story that you hear Joe DiMaggio coming to her rescue. And it's like, if you don't give me my wife, I will take this hospital apart brick by brick. And they're like, okay, we'll give her to you. Okay, here you go. And so that's kind of through the rest of 1961, it still kind of deteriorates her mental health, but she doesn't keep her promise. She starts to open her mouth and tell people about her relationship and her little trysts with who she called the Prez, and started telling her friends that she knows state secrets. So she's sitting on this political bombshell, which is basically the assassination of Fidel Castro. And she carries that secret and others with her until 1962, when it all converges on top of each other. And basically, I would build you a roadmap of who was surveilling who at this point. But you can just pretty much assume they all got files on each other.
Everybody was looking at everybody.
Oh my God, everybody was looking at everybody. I mean, Hoover comes into play. He's got files on JFK, RFK, Maryland's psychiatrists. It's all intertwined, and Marilyn is smack dab in the freaking middle of all this stuff. So we pick up at the beginning of 1962. Like I said, she had 3 failed marriages behind her because of her ties to Arthur Miller. And the people who are actually watching her at this time, we know is the FBI and the CIA, that because of her affair with JFK, her close ties to the Communist Party for fear that she's going to talk, the mafia was keeping tabs on her because they were trying to get dirt on the Kennedy brothers because Robert Kennedy had launched this massive thing against the mafia, trying to take them down and all this stuff. And they figured that Marilyn might be able to help. They wanted to try and catch the boys with her. So it kind of leads us to the end of January 1962, beginning of February 1962. She gets invited over to Peter and Patricia Lawford's, which is Patricia Kennedy Lawford's house, in which Patricia Kennedy is like, you have to meet my brother. You have to meet my brother. Well, her brother is Bobby Kennedy. Now, this is the first time that we kind of see her and Bobby meet. And the reason why we know that is because she wrote to her ex-father-in-law a letter that's dated February 2nd, 1962, and saying that I attended a dinner party at Pat and Peter Lawford's house. Bobby was there. He wanted to meet me, is what he tells her, or what she tells him. And so that's kind of how we can pinpoint her and Bobby meeting. Any questions so far? I know I'm rambling.
No, we're ready. We're ready for you to bring us to the date that we're going to start talking. You guys, he's just introducing the players. We are getting conspiracy theory here.
Yeah.
I do have a question really fast.
Go for it.
Does Robert know that JFK had been previously linked to Marilyn Monroe? He knows they had a tryst.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean,
I don't know how he couldn't.
I don't know how he couldn't because he's the attorney general at this point.
Okay.
You know, I mean, he's got his brother's back on everything. So, so basically that's where her infatuation with the Kennedy brothers comes into play. And in March, really people think that Marilyn and JFK's affairs with this decade-long thing, we can't really say for sure. But in March of 1962, we can kind of pinpoint down to the one thing that we can almost document, if you will, JFK and Marilyn being intimate, because JFK is supposed to come out to Palm Springs. He's supposed to stay at Frank Sinatra's house. Frank Sinatra does this massive remodel on his house, all this JFK stuff going up, gets a plaque that says Kennedy slept here and all that. And Bobby Kennedy says, hey, there's a lot of mafia connections with Frank Sinatra. It might not be a good thing for you to be seen there. Why don't you go stay at Bing Crosby's house? And he does. And that ends up ripping Frank Sinatra and Peter Lawford's friendship apart. They never speak again because Sinatra blames Peter for that.
Yeah, you just pissed off the chairman of the board.
Yeah.
There's a reason why he had that nickname.
So, excuse me. So it's during that time that he's at Bing Crosby's house that Ralph Roberts, who is Marilyn's masseuse.
No relation.
Yeah, right. No relation to Ryan. But Ralph Roberts receives a telephone call from Marilyn on one of the nights that JFK happens to be staying at the Bing Crosby house. And she says, hey, I got a friend here. And we were talking about the muscles that, you know, blah, blah, blah. He's got a bad back and da-da-da-da. And I wanted you to relay to him that that's what I'm talking about. And the phone gets transferred over. And Ralph Roberts says it was no guess as to who was on the freaking phone because I heard the strong Boston accents that we all know. He's like, there's no doubt I was talking to JFK. And she's supposedly massaging his back at this point. So that's kind of one of the ones that we can say, okay, there may have been a little bit of documentation that they could have been being intimate. Now, we weren't in the bedroom. I'll say that. We weren't in the bedroom. But
I have innocently gotten naked and given someone a massage before. There's nothing to it. We've all done that. We've all been in college, right?
Sure. Yeah. So that takes us past that and into April 1962, where Marilyn starts to kind of get back up on her feet. I mean, she gets a new movie. Something's Got to Give. We know that that's a famous movie. It's her last movie that she got a role in, starring alongside Dean Martin and Sid Charisse. However, prior to filming, actually on the day of filming, she gets super sick. And she's like, hey, I can't come in. I can't, I can't work. I've got sinus issues and all this kind of stuff. And they didn't believe her. So they sent doctors to her house and they were like, oh, yeah, by the way, she's super sick. She's got sinusitis and it's going to take 6 weeks at most to get her, because that's heavy antibiotics that she's got to have rounds of.
Mm-hmm.
And the studio started kind of freaking out. They were like, okay, she's already screwed up. Some Like It Hot, The Misfits, all this showing up late. She had her reputation. We know that. We understand that. And also at the same time, they had Cleopatra happening, starring Elizabeth Taylor. That was $1 to $2 million over budget. They were running behind. And so Marilyn goes through this whole thing where she's like, I can't freaking work. I mean, I think out of 7 weeks, she showed up like 5 days or something like that on this set, because she was just so sick. Now, also at this time, she had a birthday coming up. She was 35. 35 back then in Hollywood was considered over the hill. So she had this added pressure as well to look good in front of the camera while still maintaining being America's sex symbol. So we get to May of 1962, which is where I'm just basically kind of skipping to, because that's where the nitty gritty gets going. And she gets this gig that I think we're all aware of, where she gets to go to Madison Square Garden and sing Happy Birthday to the President.
Oh, boy.
So on May 17th, and the studio tells her, no, you've been sick. You need to cancel this. You cannot go. Bobby actually calls the studio and says, you need to release her. And they're like, why? And he says, because the president wants it, and God damn it, so do I. So release her. Let her go. So on May 17th, against the studio's wishes, a helicopter lands on the studio lot. She hops aboard it and gets to the airport, and she takes an air flight to New York City, where she sings Happy Birthday, Mr. President. Now, it's almost right at that time when she gets invited to this to sing that trouble starts to happen. She's in her dressing room. Supposedly, this is a story from Mickey Song, which was her hairdresser at the time. He says that Bobby Kennedy showed up, opened the dressing room door, kicked him out of it, closed the dressing room door, and all he could hear was Bobby's voice rising, 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 rising. And the door opens and he goes, you can go in now. By the way, do you like her? And he enthusiastically is like, yeah, absolutely. And he goes, really? Because I think she's a fucking rude bitch. And walks off.
Whoa.
Yeah. And so he goes in. There's this disheveled Marilyn in there, is what he said. And he had to help her get back together. She was the last one to perform. And the whole night long, they were saying, like, Peter Lawford was out announcing her, like, Mr. President, Marilyn Monroe. It was a play on it, her reputation. And she wouldn't appear. And Mr. President, Marilyn Monroe, she wouldn't appear. And then finally, he says, Mr. President, the late Marilyn Monroe. And that's always kind of been kind of shocking to me.
Mad with me.
Yeah.
Just because I'm not reading too much in it, but the foreshadowing aspect of that has always shocked me. And so Marilyn comes out, and we've all, I'm sure, seen the video of this. She saunters onto the stage. She's got the white ermine coat on. She drops the coat, and the audience gasps, because in classic Marilyn style, she revealed herself in a Jean-Louis untarnished, now historical, nude illusion style dress, with carefully placed and hand sewn rhinestones, and she looked like anything but trash. In case anybody wants to know where I stand on that.
She was stunning. She glided onto
She was absolutely stunning.
And she melted like butter with her voice. And she had the entire audience transfixed. She does not sing that song quickly. She draws it out, and she lets that butter just drip all over you. Yeah. And it is a stunning, obviously very memorable performance. And that is that beautiful dress.
Absolutely. Now, it's also at this time that Jackie's not in attendance. Jackie Kennedy, she's not in attendance. She basically found out that Marilyn was performing, and she's like, look, if you're going to do this, I'm out. I'm going to go horseback riding in Virginia. And she went. And she was not there, which I think sent a very strong message to him, essentially. Now, there was an after party at that out of all the photos taken that night, there's only one that survives with her and the two brothers. That's it. That's the only one that survives.
And that looks like a tense photo to me.
Yeah. I mean, you can see Bobby Kennedy is kind of smiling, it looks like, but Marilyn's lips are pursed,
Yeah, she's not happy.
Yeah. So it's after this that there's a meeting between Hoover and JFK. And while meeting is going on towards the end of May, Marilyn's already flown back and she's on the set of Something's Got to Give, where she's 33 hours later. And that's when she films the nude swimming thing that she's well known for, that was trying to be published in Playboy and all this stuff, on the set of Something's Got to Give. 33 hours after she attended this birthday gala. And at the same time, around that time, Hoover and JFK are having a talk, and all of a sudden Marilyn's direct access to the president is disconnected. White House staff has told any calls from Miss Green, which was her code name, were not to be put through. And JFK actually made Peter Lawford call Marilyn and say, hey, just to let you know.
Knock it off.
Yeah, it's done. And he knew he had to be blunt. And I think this is where the first bit of the mental anguish from this started to happen, because he called her, and this is from Patricia Kennedy's story. She said, Peter called her and said, quote, from her, quote, there was no effort to let her down easy. She was told that she'd never be able to speak to the president again, that she was never going to be the first lady. She was not even a serious affair. And when Marilyn broke down, Peter said, quote, look, Marilyn, you're just another one of Jack's fucks. And left it at that.
Brutal.
Yeah.
Okay, that had to be devastating for her.
Oh, absolutely. I mean,
God almighty.
So she just gets rejected by the most powerful man. This is kind of leading up to all of this stuff. She's starting to get pissed off at this point. And
that would have pissed me off too. I might have written something on the side of that wall.
She kind of starts going maybe a little bit crazy at this point. She starts calling all these kind of people trying to get JFK's direct number. She actually calls Patricia Kennedy directly and asks for JFK's number. Patricia Kennedy actually says, you know what, if you want it, here's the freaking number. Now, there's actually never any record that shows that number was dialed from Marilyn's house, or that she attempted to reach him through that number, but Patricia said that she did give her the number. So she turns 36 during all of this as well, at the beginning of June 1st. And the studio's still pissed at her for leaving against her wishes and whatnot. She's starting to show up late again, or not show up on set. She's stuttering. George Cukor, the director of Something's Got to Give, starts kind of almost bullying her on set. And it's by June the 8th that she is fired from set. And all of this, and it's like the studio turned on her and they started sending out all this press basically saying that, you know what, I think she's gone around the bend, the poor dear. She's losing it. They even put out an ad from the cast and crew from Something's Got to Give that says, thanks for taking away our livelihoods. I mean, they really attacked her. But Marilyn was one of these, and this is what I love about her. Marilyn was one of these where she was not about to go silently. And she decided, you know what? Screw y'all. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to go on the defense. Or defense, offense. I don't know. But anyways, she starts booking all of these interviews, photo shoots with Red Book, Life, Vogue, Cosmo, in which she's just basically coming out going, no, they fired me, blah, blah, blah. And she's starting to tell her life and really get these people drawn into her. And she wins the public back. The public starts writing letters in. Dean Martin basically says, I'm not making this movie if Marilyn's not in it. You can forget it. And he's about to walk out. So 16 days after she is fired, the studio does an about face. And it's like, oh, no, Marilyn, come back. Please come back. And she's like, cool. We're going to do it on my terms, though. And I want a new contract. And I want more money. And she lands her biggest deal of her career. She signs on at $500,000 for the completion of Something's Got to Give, with a bonus upon completion, and another $500,000 for another movie that she's to make after Something's Got to Give. So she has this kind of newfound sense and pride and confidence, but to me, it's always been like, at what cost?
Yeah.
So shortly after her victory on July the 4th, there's a barbecue at Pat and Peter Lawford's house. And Marilyn and Bobby are allegedly both attended. And the reason why we know this is because there's an FBI document dated July the 13th that talks about something that they talked between each other strolling on the beach. And basically in that FBI document, it says that whatever they spoke about became of national security. Now, to kind of give you an idea of what was going on around that time, on July 17th of 1962, Bobby Kennedy was to meet the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Maxwell Taylor, out in Nevada for the first continental U.S. H-bomb testing. So she gets interviewed a little bit later after this barbecue, and it's one of the last interviews she does. I believe it's for Red Book that she did, and they said, "What are your dreams?" She said, "Oh, my dreams are too intimate to be revealed in public." And he said, "Well, what are your nightmares?" And she said, "My nightmare is the H-bomb. What's yours?" And this is this is shortly after the first H-bomb testing that Bobby Kennedy was a part of. Another thing is it ties in one of her dates to the Golden Globes back in April, Jose Bolaños, and he was a Mexican director that she had close ties to, and he was revealed as the informant basically because he says this was told directly to me by Marilyn herself, and the reason why I know this is because I last saw her in early July whenever she had told me this, and the barbecue happened to be at early July. And the FBI document, they tie it together that Bolaños is really the only one that could have been the informant that was telling this. And they said basically he was telling the truth. He had been her attendant, had been in attendance with her to the Golden Globes back in April. He had seen her. He was in her presence, and therefore she must have told him exactly what Bobby Kennedy told her. So they have confirmation that she's starting to really blab these state secrets. And it's also around this time that Bobby has a meeting with Hoover himself as well. And all of a sudden, Marilyn's direct line to the Department of Justice cut off. She won't be put through. Bobby had an emergency, Bobby had her connection pulled, and she starts kind of going ballistic. She had no idea why. She didn't understand what it was, but basically Hoover's like, dude, come on. Like, you're blabbing freaking H-bomb secrets, man. You know how close she's tied to the Communist Party? I mean, she's not. A lot of people have said Marilyn was communist. Now, Marilyn had left-leaning views. She was very all about equality and all that kind of stuff. And she did hang around people who were either had ties to the Communist Party or were part of the Communist Party. But I don't think she herself ever transitioned into being a communist herself. But they were afraid she was giving shit away to the Russians. I mean, that's
well, at that time,
to.
all your name had to be done was to be mentioned by someone, and you were going to be investigated. A lot of very famous people in Hollywood were on that list, lost their jobs, they were blackballed. They were run out of the entertainment industry just because someone mentioned their name. And then they became this was basically a witch hunt going on back then for the communists. We got to get the communists.
Yeah. Yeah. And so she calls her friend Robert Slatzer, and she basically screams at him, like, he's quoted her as saying, "Damn it, he owes me an explanation. I want to know what happened, and I want Bobby to tell me himself." And through the remainder of July, Marilyn's phone records indicate that she tried to reach Bobby a total of 8 separate occasions at the Department of Justice, as well as his Hickory Hill house. Now, that's what pissed him off. That Patricia Kennedy was like, that pissed him off, was her trying to call his private house where his wife is at, where his children are at.
Shouldn't have had an affair.
Yeah, so he should have kept it in his britches. He didn't have to worry about it.
Because that was the thing between JFK and RFK, was their modus operandi, so to speak, was that JFK would start it and pass it off to RFK, and he would be there to swoop in and pick up the pieces and kind of put it all together and then make it go away. I mean, that's how they work. That's how they operated. But I think in this instance, Bobby ended up taking too much of a liking to Marilyn, ended up falling in love with Marilyn, just as his brother had done. And I think when he finally figured out that, holy shit, she really is blabbing state secrets to randos who have ties to the Communist Party, I got to cut her off. So one of Marilyn's fatal flaws, though, is that she got into an argument with Bobby one time. He's like, "You never remember anything that I freaking say." So she started this, what is an now infamous Little Red Diary. And it's debatable whether the thing actually exists, but there are 3 people who said they saw it the night she died, and the medical examiner the day that her body came in for an autopsy. He saw it, said he locked it into a filing cabinet, and the next day he went in and it was gone. It's never been seen again. And she wrote down all this stuff that was going on. She wrote down about the H-bomb. She wrote down about Fidel Castro. She wrote down about, all these state secrets that were happening because she wanted to remember what her and Bobby talked about.
And I believe she also wrote something about that little army base in the desert about Roswell.
I'm getting there.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to jump to your story.
No, I'm getting there. So Marilyn's kind of biding her time at the same time. with the studio because yes, she's got this new contract, but she hadn't signed it yet. She's waiting for a former executive of the studio to have this boardroom battle, and that is Daryl Zanuck, which is a very strange ally for her because their relationship early on seemed a little bit more predatory on his side than anything. She was like 16 or 18 or something. I feel like he took advantage of her, just knowing that. But anyways,
the casting couch is infamous in
Yeah.
Hollywood. Yeah.
And Marilyn she utilized her sexuality. I mean, there's no secret about that to help her where she needed it. And her plan was to put in motion for a tell-all moment in this explosive press conference where she's going to bring down those who were using her, because that's what she felt like at this time. She felt like, damn it, I'm so tired of being used. This is another round where these people are using me, and screw them. Let's bring them down. Let's take them down. Let's take down the Kennedys. Yeah, that sounds smart. I'm sorry. Love you, Marilyn.
No.
But so Marilyn gets invited to Lake Tahoe to the Cal Neva Club again. And this is the weekend that is pretty interesting in Marilyn's life. A lot of debate has happened over the July 28th and July 29th weekend of 1962. And that is what's called, I was referring to earlier, as the Lost Weekend, because nobody ever really knew exactly what had happened. Now, this meeting was organized by Sinatra, and it was under false pretenses because he was flying her out there to the Cal Neva to celebrate her new her new contract, her new movie deal, and all this stuff. But at the same time, and Dean Martin she didn't really want to go. Dean Martin was going to be performing there, and she's like, hey, I got to talk to him about some of the things about something's got to give, so I'm going to go. But he had also invited Pat and Peter Lawford, even though Peter and him had not spoken since the whole Bing Crosby blow up with Kennedy staying at Bing Crosby's house. Marilyn's friend Gloria Romanoff, who was a restaurant owner of Romanoff's. And then when Marilyn gets there, she sees Gloria Romanoff, and she's surprised to see yet another face, which is Sam Giancana. Now, because Sam Giancana was an actual registered guest at the Cal Neva that weekend, July 18, July 29th, Frank Sinatra would actually lose his gambling license because of that. So
can't consort with felons and own a casino.
Nope.
Can't do it.
Can't. And also supposed to be in attendance was Bobby Kennedy and JFK. Now, something happened where JFK didn't show up. But the Beverly Hills Register shows in Los Angeles shows Bobby Kennedy checking in on July 26th and checking out on July 27th. And this is what I find interesting. Even though his diaries are in the Kennedy Library of his daily diaries and appointment books, the portions over the latter part of July and the early part of August of that year are not available and can't be found. Little questionable.
A little weird.
Yeah. So it's like you have all these mixture of all the key players of this like deadly game of power, leverage, betrayal that had become Marilyn's love life. And she's there right in front of it. Excuse me. And it soon became apparent to her why she was there. It's not this congratulatory, you got a new contract, you got a new movie deal. It was, they're there to get me to shut up. Giancana was there to enforce just how important it was to Marilyn that she didn't cause any trouble. Because if Marilyn became a problem, he had made it clear to her that problems could be dealt with. And we all know what that freaking means.
Yeah, she was lured there. She was lured there 100%.
I actually find this quite interesting. I was listening to one of the podcasts, and a former employee of Frank Costello, which is another mafia boss, he's also a Godfather actor, Gianni Russo. I think y'all know who I'm talking about when I say that. He gives a firsthand account of that weekend because this is his quote. Quote, I was in Lake Tahoe that weekend again to be the eyes and ears for Mr. Costello when Sam Giancana and Sinatra were commanded to bring everybody there. She, talking about Marilyn, went on to the Cal Neva, and there was a wild party that went on that weekend. A lot of the Chicago mob people were there. They had her room set up. They needed Marilyn because they were going to use Marilyn as the ploy. They were going to try and set her up, Bobby Kennedy and John. They wanted to catch the two boys with Marilyn one more time and then threaten them with that blackmail because nobody's going to vote for a Catholic president cheating on his wife, Marilyn Monroe, and the brother Bobby. They thought they would photograph Marilyn with John and Bobby, but John didn't go. Something happened. He didn't come, but Joe came, the father. Joe and Bobby came. So that's what the whole meeting was about, but they wanted to do it their way. Then blackmail them, show them the pictures, now invade Cuba, kill Cuba. And he flat out says Marilyn Monroe was afraid for her life. It was a situation where it got out of hand. Marilyn was taken advantage of. She was physically taken advantage of by people. She was drugged, and they had a wild party up there. And I also read another article by a guy with a last name Greco, who claims that he was there too. And I was like, okay, this is another guy that's probably just making shit up. He's about the same age as Marilyn. This is about 10 years ago. And he actually produced a picture. That is him on the left with Marilyn, and that is Sinatra in the background, and that is taken at the Cal Neva Lodge on the weekend of July 28th and July 29th. And he corroborates a lot of what was said by Gianna Russo. Now, another tie-in to this is Barbara Lieto, who is a widow of Sinatra's pilot, says that her husband was ordered to Lake Tahoe on short notice on Sunday, July the 9th. Now, according to her, from her husband's story, Peter and Marilyn returned together, and Marilyn appeared to be heavily drugged or intoxicated. When the plane landed after midnight on July the 30th, Marilyn was ushered, very inebriated, to a waiting limo, where Lieto then got out of the plane and into the limo driving and drove Peter and Marilyn home. And a few blocks prior to Peter's house, he asked Lieto to pull over so he could make a phone call on a payphone. Because by now, I'm sure Bobby had informed him, hey, your phone's been tapped, dumbass.
Mm-hmm.
And he makes a 20-minute phone call that pisses his driver, Lieto, off. White House phone records actually indicate that the president received a call from Lawford on the morning of July the 30th at 8:40 p.m. in the morning, or 8:40 a.m. in the morning, or 5:40 a.m. Pacific time, lasting a duration of 18 minutes. So it's actually on the White House log. And it seemed that almost like this Maryland problem had reached a crucial impasse. You know, she was furious at this point, and she decided she was going to take revenge. So she started telling people, you know what, next Monday, I'm going to the press. I'm going to reveal all of my secrets that I know. And her fatal flaw, I believe this is the fatal flaw, besides writing the crap down. Allegedly, she had called the Department of Justice and demanded to speak to Bobby Kennedy. This is after she gets back from Cal Neva. And she never spoke to him, but she told the switchboard operator she threatened both Kennedy brothers with public exposures if they didn't return her phone calls and address their affairs with her. She claimed she knew state secrets, and worse, she had already told Bobby of the president's plan to assassinate Fidel Castro. That's how Bobby knew that she was blabbing secrets. She also threatened Bobby with going public about the fact that she knew all about that secret Air Force base in Nevada.
Oh, no.
Now, whether that phone call actually took place or not, because there is no record from her phone calls or the Department of Justice records. So right now we have something that may be a little bit hearsay, but I found it on 3 separate sources. Yes, it could have been bled throughout the generations and years and all that kind of stuff. But do I think somebody who was that pissed at that moment, knowing Marilyn and how she liked to flail out almost vengefully every now and then, could she have taken that opportunity to do that? Yeah, I really think she could have.
I think that everyone has gotten angry enough to say, really, you want me to tell so-and-so what you did? Because I will. You better get your shit back in line.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, everybody's done that. And she's just been basically kicked out of the bed of 2 very famous people for basically no reason. Not other than the fact that, they were done playing with their toy.
That's anyone who she saw herself to them. She saw herself in their eyes that she was their plaything.
Yep.
And she was furious about it. She was done with it. What were you going to say, Ryan? Sorry.
I was going to say anyone who's been scorned like that could fly off the handle and say some shit they don't mean to or need to say.
There's actually a moment that I found a quote, and I couldn't ever actually pinpoint exactly when she said it. It was around the time of Bobby cutting her off, and she couldn't get through to him. And she called Robert Slatzer, I believe is who it was. And she actually said, who the fuck does he think I am? I'm Marilyn Monroe. I'm more popular and famous than he is. So she's also taking digs at his ego too. But at this point in her life, after she makes this threat, she's got a lot of people. She's got the Kennedys mad at her. Hoover is mad at her. The mafia, the FBI, the CIA, some of her friends. And they all had one thing in common. They wanted to get hands on the information that Marilyn had and to silence her or to shut her up. One of the two. And in the ways that she flailed out and her vengefulness sometimes, in some ways made her the most dangerous woman in America, if you think about it, with the shit that she knew. So with all these people mad at her on August 5th, 1962, is when the news broke. Marilyn Monroe kills self, blames pills. But that's where shit goes freaking sideways. Because if you look at the original, now we're going to get into the death of her. Kind of got an idea of what her last 3 months is like. Now she has passed away. Unfortunately, I hated writing that part in this story because I love Marilyn so much. I was like, she's got 5 days. She's got 4 days. Like, so the original timeline of this is basically that Marilyn makes a couple of phone calls tonight on August the 4th, night before she's found dead in her bed. One of them being the last one is Peter Lawford at about 7:30. And she says in that she's very groggy. And he says the now famous quote, "Say goodbye to Pat, say goodbye to Bobby, say goodbye to the president, and say goodbye to yourself because you're a nice guy." And the other end goes silent. She didn't hang up, but it just went silent. And he said he tried to call back and he got a busy signal, or that the phone was off the hook or whatever. And so he makes a couple of calls to his people, and they finally get a hold of Marilyn's lawyer. Marilyn's lawyer calls the house, gets Eunice Murray, her housekeeper. And
someone has replaced the phone back on the cradle at this point.
Well, there's two lines. Marilyn's got a
private line.
She got a private line and a house line, correct. And so they get Eunice Murray on the phone and they say, "Hey, is Marilyn all right?" She looks over at the door, sees the light on with the telephone cord running underneath it, which is nothing new for Marilyn. Everybody knew her to be a late night dialer, and says, "Yeah, she's fine." And she goes to bed at 10 o'clock. She says to the police the day that they show up and Marilyn's dead, "I woke up at around midnight, noticed that the light was still on, and that's when I became frightened, so I called Dr. Greenson, which is her psychiatrist. He came over, looked outside through the window, saw her naked laying on the bed, broke the window, and went inside and informed me that she was dead, and then we called the police."
The question, why would he have to break the window if Eunice was there?
Because the door to her bedroom was supposedly locked, and so was the window.
But if Eunice is the
housekeeper, you just get why couldn't you just get a screwdriver and take the door off the hinges? Why you got to break the window?
Ooh, hold on, I'm about to mess with y'all brains.
I know, we're ready. We're ready.
I know, because we about to get into some discussion shit here. So they call the police 4 hours later. It is logged by Jack Clemens, the guy who took the phone call, that he got a call at 4:25. Said, "I am Marilyn. Yes, in the morning. I am Marilyn's physician. Marilyn has died. She has committed suicide. You need to come." So they find her. Eunice finds her at midnight. Dr. Greenson's there by 12:30. They know she's dead. There's 4 freaking hours that go by before they contact the police. Fishy as hell.
Yeah.
Now, here's where it really starts to get interesting. The following day, they are re-interviewed. The people that were on the scene were Eunice Murray, her housekeeper, Dr. Engelberg, her physician, and Dr. Greenson, her psychiatrist. Dr. Greenson and Dr. Engelberg were in the room with Marilyn whenever the police arrived. And Eunice Murray, Jack Clemens states, was doing laundry. She was cleaning. Yes.
Well, now doing laundry is one thing. Cleaning's another. Cleaning, you've got people coming in. Okay, we're gonna straighten things. But doing laundry, that's a tad bit fishy.
I mean, that could also be a trauma response too, though, on her end, where she's just like, "I don't know what to do. This is fucked up. I'm just gonna clean." I don't.
But while you doing laundry, she ain't gonna wear nothing else.
True.
But he had noticed that she was that when he walked into the room, he said he got this eerie feeling that he had not walked into a suicide. He had walked into a homicide, because what he felt in that room and what he kind of noticed was that the sheets were very clean. They were draped across her body. It almost looked as if she was posed in the bed, almost in one of the exact poses, one of her nude calendar shoots that she did. That's his exact words. Now, Eunice Murray, Dr. Greenson, and Dr. Engelberg are being interviewed the following day, all of a sudden, all three of their stories have shifted by 3.5 hours. Eunice Murray has now found Marilyn at 3:30 in the morning, and the police were called at 4:30. So, and that is across the board. Now, this is where, okay, hold on. Before I jump the gun, let me back up. Also, what was told to Jack Clemens was that Patricia Newcomb, Norman Jeffries, who was the handyman, Patricia Newcomb's her publicist, Norman Jeffrey, who was the handyman, and Mickey Rudin, who was Marilyn's lawyer, were at the house by the time that the second officers got there to relieve Jack Clemens.
So shift change.
It's basically a shift change.
Okay.
Jack Clemens didn't see them. So he basically says, I saw a lot of cars at the house when I arrived. So he's thinking they had to be there prior to me getting there. But they just magically appeared when all of this next round of officers were being asked. Also, the coroner shows up at 5:45. And the coroner has said that based on rigor mortis, stiffening of the body, liver mortis, the pooling of the blood, and algor mortis, which is the temperature of the body, they would have to put her to death 6 to 8 hours prior to them arriving on the scene.
So between 10:30 and midnight on August the 4th,
they
not
arrived
on the 5th.
At 5:45, which means that she would have had to have died between 9:45 and 11:45 p.m. on August the 4th. The other issue that I have with is that Eunice Murray says that she saw the light underneath Marilyn's door. There's two problems with that. Marilyn's room is here. Eunice Murray's room is up here, even with Marilyn's. Eunice Murray has her own bathroom. Eunice Murray's door is here and Marilyn's right here. She could not get through her bedroom to go to her bathroom. She wouldn't have seen the light coming underneath the door. She wouldn't have been able to see underneath the door by the way that she was going.
But didn't someone go ask her if Marilyn was okay? And she said that she went to look and perhaps she went back to look.
However, it's pointed out to her a couple of days later that because of remodeling in Marilyn's house, a new thick carpet had been installed in Marilyn's bedroom that was too thick to allow light to come through the door. And she goes, oh, well, it was the telephone cord that alerted me. So she's switching again, which we know is nothing different in Marilyn's house. I mean, people, like I said, her friend said 2-3 o'clock in the morning, that's when she would call the most. And then all of a sudden, years later down the road, all of a sudden it's her, get this, Piscean abilities that alerted her that something was wrong with Marilyn Monroe.
Her astrology sign determined her ability to know what was wrong.
Okay.
She is quoted as saying in her book that she co-wrote with her sister or sister-in-law, one of the two, that it was her Piscean, quote, Piscean abilities that alerted her that something was wrong with Marilyn, and that's why she called Dr. Greenson. Here's my question, though. When somebody calls you and asks you, is Marilyn okay? Where'd your Piscean abilities go?
Yeah.
All of a sudden, you don't have them, and you just look at the door, you go, oh, yeah, she's fine. And then, at midnight, 3:30 in the morning, your Piscean, 7 hours later, your Piscean abilities kick back in all of a sudden?
There wasn't anything wrong till then. You leave her alone.
So
that is fishy, not to be punny.
Yeah.
A little fishy.
Yeah. So some of the other things that just really don't add up to me is the fact that you have to. I'm trying to remember where we're at. Sorry, y'all. I'm telling y'all, my brain.
Let me say this about the door. Okay. So even like I can turn on the light in my closet in my room, and I can close the door and forget that it's on. I do have carpet. You can't see the light from the door, but sometimes around the door's edge, if you've turned everything off in your room and you lay down, you're like, crap, I left the closet light on. Then you have to get up and go turn it off. Perhaps if that hallway was dark, she could have legitimately, even with the remodel, seen some light emanating through that, because no door joins perfectly. Could have perhaps seen the light coming through the edges of that door. Perhaps that was the truth. Perhaps she did see the telephone cord.
Mm-hmm.
But again, if somebody's called to specifically ask you, is she okay? I don't understand why you don't go, hey, Are you okay in there?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So here's the reason why it's very shifty. The night that she died, Pat Newcomb had stayed the night on August the 3rd with Marilyn because she was sick, and Marilyn had told her, she was like, come over here and you can have all the rest you want. You can sunbathe, you can do all that kind of stuff. Supposedly there was a disagreement between Pat and Marilyn the day that she died on August the 4th.
Can you remind everybody who Pat Newcomb is again, please?
Patricia Newcomb, or Pat Newcomb, is Marilyn's publicist. And apparently they had an argument or disagreement the day that Marilyn died. And it was supposedly over to the ability for Pat to sleep through the night when Marilyn had so much trouble sleeping. But my issue is that why was there an argument between them two when that was the reason why she brought her over to Marilyn's house?
Yeah.
Because she stays the night with Marilyn. She wakes up the next morning. Apparently there's a disagreement. She stays on through lunch. Eunice Murray cooks her lunch. And then they say that Marilyn inquires about some oxygen. She says, Eunice, do we have any oxygen in the house? And Eunice goes, I don't know. And she calls Dr. Greenson the first time. Dr. Greenson comes over at 4:30. Back then, oxygen was used for hangovers. Eunice probably didn't know that, but Dr. Greenson did. So he comes over. There is a 2-hour therapy session in Marilyn's bedroom where they are in the bedroom together having a therapy session. After he leaves, he comes out and he's asked Eunice Murray to stay the night. And he asks Pat Newcomb, he's like, are you leaving? And she gets up and she walks out. And it's all just kind of fishy because after that is when the phone calls start, because Marilyn had taken the phone into her room. And the first one was supposedly Peter Lawford at about 5-something, asking if Marilyn was coming to the party. She said, no, I didn't feel like it, blah, blah, blah. Hung up that phone. After
he
that,
speaks to Marilyn?
He speaks to Marilyn at about
At
5
5
o'clock.
what?
At about, I think it was between 5 and 5:30 that he spoke to Marilyn. She sounded fine. At 7 o'clock, Marilyn's called to the phone by Eunice because Joe DiMaggio Jr. is on the line. And Joe DiMaggio Jr. confirms that it was about 7 o'clock. He spoke to Marilyn. She was upbeat. She was happy, normal person, didn't, nothing. And that was around the same time that Dr. Greenson had left at about 7. And at 7:30, Peter calls her again. And that's when she says the line, say goodbye to yourself, blah, 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 because you're a nice guy. And that's where the line goes dead. Now, there's a little bit of a difference because the haunting question becomes is, for me, why there's 6 people that decided that they were going to withhold the truth on the day that Marilyn died. And that is Patricia Newcomb, her publicist, Dr. Greenson, her psychiatrist, Dr. Engelberg, her physician, Eunice Murray, her housekeeper, Mickey Rudin, her lawyer, and who's the last one? Peter Lawford.
Perhaps they were threatened?
Well, because here's the thing is that little Miss Eunice Murray, she's the one that I kind of like pinpoint on. Her story shifts the most. The reason why she didn't, or why she was alerted something was wrong, changes the most. Light under the door, telephone cord under the door, and then her Piscean abilities. Now, years later, when she's being interviewed by Anthony Summers in 1985, 80, I think it's 85, she's mic'd up. She walks off the set once the interview is done, thinking that the interview is over.
Oh.
And she's overheard saying, and I quote, "At my age, why do I have to keep covering this up?"
Robert Durst moment.
Yes.
Hot mic.
Yeah. So if you go back now, you remember Marilyn Monroe is also having surveillance done on her as well. She's got her house is bugged. I mean, it's reported all over the place that her telephone wires are bugged. So we should know who she called and when she called.
What happened?
Exactly what happened. The new timeline becomes that she wakes up that morning at 6 a.m. She calls Jean Carmen. Supposedly, allegedly, there's a lot of debate around that. Jean Carmen was an actress and supposedly friends with Marilyn at that time. She asked Jean if she can come over and spend time with her. Jean says, no, it's not. It's my birthday. I'm not going to be able to. She wakes up. There is a disagreement between Pat Newcomb and Marilyn Monroe, but it's not about her ability to sleep. Pat Newcomb was 4 years younger than Marilyn Monroe. And as I've already shown you the picture, she was not a bad looking woman. And in Marilyn's mind at this point, something had been taking place between Bobby Kennedy and Patricia Newcomb. Now, whether that's true or not, Marilyn believed it.
Mm-hmm.
And in her mind, it was so. And that's what the disagreement was, because Pat actually was fired that day. Eunice was actually fired that day. She was getting ready to fire Dr. Greenson based on a note that he had written, that Dr. Greenson had written Marilyn's New York psychoanalyst that said, I think she's about to terminate my services. She was cleaning house. That was the thing. So that was what the disagreement was over. And with the Buggings, there was a guy named Fred Otash. Shelley, you should know that name. He worked very closely with the mafia and the mob, and he was hired by the mafia, Sam Giancana, specifically, to put a bug in Marilyn's house. Now, there are people who claim to have heard 40 minutes of these tapes, but these tapes were taken when Fred Otash's house was raided, and they were destroyed. So these tapes do not exist. They went through all kinds of litigation, allegedly.
Yeah.
They went through all kinds of litigation, allegedly, to try and get them back, and they never existed ever again. So what ends up happening on the tapes is he says at about earlier in the afternoon, before Dr. Greenson's get there at 4:30, that there's a knock at the door, and that it is Robert Kennedy. And he shows up because he confronts Marilyn about the Little Red Diary and all the stuff that she's written down, and he wants all of that. And on the tapes, you hear them having the disagreement and everything, and it gets heated. Allegedly, Marilyn brandishes a knife and lunges at Bobby Kennedy, which Peter Lawford is heard on the tape getting the knife. One of the two men get the knife away from her. She's heard sobbing and running away. Now, why I find this very interesting is because he was in California during this time. He was not supposed to be near Maryland at any point in this moment. But studio security logs at 20th Century Fox are noted that a helicopter landed and received clearance at 11 a.m. that morning, which is also confirmed by a studio publicist, Frank Neal. And who watches the helicopter, out pops Bobby Kennedy, who gets into a waiting limo. The reason why he says this is because Bobby had just landed a movie deal of his book, The Enemy Within, and he had been doing a lot of, which was a flop and never aired, all that kind of shit. Anyways, he hops out of the helicopter, gets into the limo. When the limo doors open, Frank says he saw Peter Lawford. Also corroborated by the Los Angeles Police Chief Daryl Gates, who stated, quote, "The truth is we knew Robert Kennedy was in town on August the 4th. Former Los Angeles Mayor Sam Yorty also stated, quote, "I had a conversation with Chief Parker, and he told me himself that Robert Kennedy had arrived in Los Angeles that day and checked into the Beverly Hilton Hotel." Tom Redden, who is a retired police chief and was assistant to Chief Parker in 1962, also stated, quote, "It was reported to me by security officers that the Attorney General was in Los Angeles on the weekend when Marilyn Monroe died." And last but not least, 23 years after Marilyn's death, Eunice Murray broke. And in 1985, she admitted that Bobby Kennedy was in Los Angeles and visited Marilyn's home on August the 4th, 1962, stating, quote, "I was not supposed to know the Kennedys were a very important part of Marilyn's life, but over a period of time, I was witness to what was happening." And when asked if Bobby Kennedy had been at Marilyn's house on August 4th, she replied, quote, "Oh, sure, yes, I was in the living room when he arrived. She was not dressed." This is a detail that's also corroborated by Norman Jeffries, who was the handyman, who was present at the house that day, that said he saw Robert Kennedy show up early in the afternoon, where the disagreement between the two of them took place over what Marilyn had written down in her Little Red Diary of Secrets. Let me grab a drink because my throat's dry. So the story picks up with Dr. Greenson's arrival at 4:30. And the reason for his visit was because Marilyn was, well, it's changed throughout the years. Number one was Marilyn's inquiry about oxygen. That's the first one. Number two is Marilyn's fight with Pat Newcomb, in which that's where he writes the letter talking about he spent 2.5 hours to calm her down, and that she was ready to terminate. She was ready to terminate his services. But he also told the Suicide Squad's doctor that did the investigation after Marilyn died that Marilyn was feeling rejected by, quote, very important men in the government that she had been close to. That's what he told the investigators that investigated her death.
Well, that's a plausible reason for, oh, this poor lady took her life. She'd just been rejected by everybody. Here's your here's your motive for that. Yes. That sounds like the exact kind of picture you would want to paint if you were trying to cover something up.
Yeah. And at 6:30, a call comes into Marilyn's house, and that's from her masseuse, Ralph Roberts, in which he gets told very pointedly she's not in right now from a man's voice, and it hangs up. He says there was no doubt it was Dr. Greenson. That's when he emerges a little bit after that and asks Pat Newcomb if she is going to leave. And she gets up and she walks out of the door because she had been fired.
What time is that again?
7.
7 in the evening. Okay.
7 in the evening, excuse me. Ooh, sorry, I've had to burp. Dr. Greenson did come out and ask Eunice Murray if she was going to stay the night, even though all her things were packed. She had already packed all of her stuff. And she told the police, she was like, well, what did you do for this long? You know, between this window and this window, da, da, da. She was like, I just had things I had to do. I had my things. And he noted that her things were in a basket. So she had packed up her stuff. When she said, yes, I'll stay, Norman Jeffries said, I'll stay as well. And it was around that time that Joe DiMaggio Jr. did call at 7:30. Excuse me. And a call was placed at that point to Peter Lawford's house around the same time as well. Joe and Dolores Narr, who were guests at Peter's party, comes forward later on, and they say, as he's returning to the table, this is 7:30. He replies, oh, that's just Marilyn. Well, 7:30 is the story he gave where she was groggy and said, say goodbye to yourself, say goodbye, da, 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 da. But he's got guests at his party saying, he said, oh, that's just Marilyn. So obviously it was not the foreboding quote that he said that she did. She said,
but you're at a party you don't really want to get into. It's kind of like, oh my gosh, I've talked to this dame drunk before. Okay, it's just Marilyn. That I think is where context becomes very important, and we can't know that context.
What she meant, yeah.
Yeah, what he meant where he says, it's just Marilyn. I mean, he might have been getting these calls at all hours of the days and night, and it's kind of like, I'm in the middle of something here.
Well, there was a phone call placed to Marilyn's house at around 8:45. That's when Eunice picked up and spoke to her lawyer and said that Marilyn was all right, you know, when her Piscean abilities weren't working. And so at 9 p.m., Jean Carmen says that she received another call from Marilyn asking, we're at 9 p.m. now, another call from Marilyn asking Jean to come over and stay, and she denied her invitation again. At 9:30, Marilyn received a call from Jose Bolaños, the Mexican director that I told you about earlier, who spoke to her about getting together and seeing her. He said no mention of her being groggy. He said that Marilyn told him something shocking. His quote was, something that will one day shock the world. And Bolaños said that Marilyn put the phone down. She didn't hang up, but the phone just was put down. Because between 9:30 and 10, a neighbor of Marilyn, Elizabeth Pollard, and a group of her friends who were playing cards saw 3 men walking down Helena Drive, 5th Helena Drive, and they stated it was the Attorney General accompanied by 2 other men between 9:30 and 10 o'clock. Norman Jeffries recalls, the handyman, that between 9:30 and 10, Bobby Kennedy with 2 other men appeared at the door. This detail was allegedly corroborated on the OTASH tapes that are now allegedly gone. And Norman Jeffries and Eunice Murray were demanded out of the house, in which they did. And it was approximately 10:30 when Peter received the call where Marilyn lapsed into unconsciousness, because the Narrs say that he called in a panic and told Joe Narr to find out what was going on at Marilyn's house. And at 10:30 is when Jeffries and Murray also say they saw the Attorney General and the 2 men leave Marilyn's house. They went back into the house, found
30
Marilyn.
minutes later?
30 minutes later.
They were in and out in 30 minutes.
30 minutes.
Wow, that's plenty of time.
They went back over to the house, found Marilyn in the guest cottage, unclothed and laying on the bed. Eunice dialed for the ambulance, and Jeffries went to the gate to wait for the ambulance, but he saw Peter Lawford and Patricia Newcomb arrive to the house. James Hall, who was one of the paramedics who got the call, said they were minutes away and that they actually got to Marilyn while she was still alive, and confirmed that she was in her guest cottage and placed a resuscitator on her And when Dr. Greenson showed up to the scene, because Dr. Greenson had been called by that time, he told them to remove the resuscitator and what they could only describe as attempt to give her a hot shot, which is they put the needle in, a pure adrenaline straight into the heart.
Mm-hmm.
He cracks a rib. And at that point, he tells him to do CPR, but at that point, it's too late. Marilyn has already passed. Now, at this time that an ambulance is allegedly at Marilyn's house at about, let's say, 10:30, two things are happening. There's a studio publicist who is attending a play with his wife when he gets tapped on the shoulder and told, you have an urgent phone call. You need to come take this. He goes and takes it, and he gets the ushers to go back to get his wife. And they go, and he gets her in the limousine, leaving a room full of people at 10:45 because he got the call that Marilyn had overdosed and that Marilyn was dead at 10:45, which would put that time frame in with the coroner's time frame based on rigor mortis, algor mortis, and liver mortis. Two neighbors said, I think I already said that they saw a ambulance at her house. Whenever they arrived later that night, back from a dinner party, that there was an ambulance out in front of Marilyn's house. Here's the kicker, because I know we want to discuss, and I'm going to give us plenty of time to do so. The biggest thing that I have found in all of this is that in 2019, there was a lady, her name was Becky Altringer. She had been looking into the death of Marilyn Monroe and doing her own investigation for 20 years. And she finally got contact information for Patricia Newcomb, Marilyn's publicist, in 2019 when Patricia was 89 years old, 57 years later. And she says, you know what I decided? I'm going to call Pat Newcomb. And she dials the number. Pat Newcomb answers. And just as Pat Newcomb's about to hang up on her, Becky says that she said, I just have a question about Marilyn for you. Can you please give me a minute? To which Pat replied to her, you have a minute, go. And she said that minute turned into an hour. And in that conversation, 57 years later, Pat makes a statement that completely contradicts everything that she has said all the way up for the past 57 years. She tells Becky and was very adamant to Becky that she received a phone call at 1 o'clock in the morning that Marilyn had died. She said that she went to her friend's house, and that was the first time she was very upset because she had seen her friend's body, and that was the first time she saw a dead body. Now, if you go back to the original timeline and think about it, Jack Clemens says that Patricia Newcomb, Norman Jeffries, Mickey Rudin showed up when the second set of officers got there, but that he saw a lot of cars there in the meantime. That was at about 5 o'clock in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
Patricia's now saying, putting herself there at 1:30 in the morning and saying that she saw Marilyn's body and described Marilyn's body, which I know there's pictures out there, but described Marilyn's body as she saw it. And the only way that she would have seen it had she been there prior to the police showing up when they cordoned off the entire house and kicked everybody out. The most shocking part of that interview was Becky really started to drill her. And she said the following conversation took place. Becky asked her, do you believe that Marilyn committed suicide? And Pat said, no, I do not. Point blank, no, I do not. Becky then asked her, do you believe that Bobby Kennedy killed Marilyn? And the most shocking answer I've ever heard, it was not a yes, it was not a no. All she said was, I hope not. Because here's my theory. There's a lot of sources that say Bobby Kennedy was in town. Okay, there's no denying that. I just ran down the list of that. I think that he did go over there. I think he did confront her. There's a couple of people that put him in her house confronting her. I think he went back after he didn't get what he wanted. I think there was an attempt to subdue her, to get her knocked out or whatever it was, just to subdue her, to be able to ransack her place, find out whatever she wanted, get the files, get all the information she had, and leave. And I think in attempting to do so, I don't think they got what they want because the red dye was spotted the day that she died and after by the medical examiner. And when the group came back to attempt to revive her, I think at that point, Something was done to her to subdue her, and they attempted to do a hot shot and added to that. And I think it exacerbated what was happening, and she ended up perishing from that. Now, so in my opinion, I think Bobby Kennedy had a hand to play. I'm going to make a very prominent claim. I think Bobby Kennedy had a hand to play in Marilyn's death. And I don't think the woman deserves for the rest of history for her death certificate to read probable suicide. Because after everything that I found, there is nothing that states to me that this woman died by her own hand. Because the investigation that follows and her autopsy that follows is all freaking jacked up. Her toxicology report states that she would have had to have swallowed anywhere between 47 to 89 Nimbutal tablets with no drinking glass found on the scene and no water to the bathroom that she had connected to her room because her house was under remodel and the water was shut off.
And no water in her stomach, correct?
There was a very small pool of liquid in her stomach. There was no leftover capsules in her stomach. There was no crystalline shapes when they did a smudge under a microscope. There was no discoloration in her intestines. There was no capsules found anywhere in her body. But her levels reached so high that it would have been enough to kill 15 people.
Okay.
And even shocking still is that when the medical examiner went back to get the specimens that he had taken and segmented out parts of her stomach and intestines, which you're supposed to do so you can see how a drug got into or how somebody absorbed something. He also took samples from all of her major organs. So he could see how the body absorbed that many drugs. When he went back, he got the blood sample that showed the levels, but he had been told that all specimens had been accidentally discarded and were never seen again.
Rather convenient.
Her phone records at the telephone company and the archives were pulled and disappeared. Her police record, if you go and look at the Los Angeles County District Clerk, you go ask for all the police records pertaining to her death. They do not exist. Or they don't want them to exist to you. Because my theory is they know what happened to her because there are check boxes on a death certificate that state natural causes, blah, 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 suicide, murder, and undetermined. And the issue I have is that they check marked suicide but wrote in probable suicide. And a lot of the people that I've read, how many death certificates come back with a probable suicide. I read places and heard things that these people who've been in business on autopsies, 20, 30, 40,000 autopsies, death certificates, and all this stuff. They think that this is the only one that they believe the word probable is in there with the word suicide.
Yes, because you have to check a box or you have a line that you can write for other. But the thing is if you can't make it one thing, you have to put undetermined or unknown.
And if they would have checked undetermined, Marilyn's case would have gone down as an unsolved case. They would have had to dig into Marilyn's life. They would have had to dig into the Kennedy's connections. They would have found everything.
They would have had to find out why.
And so to get the monkey off their back, check mark, probable suicide.
So, to be clear, what you are saying is you think that Robert Kennedy was involved. However, you don't think it was intentional. Like it was an accident. They were just trying to drug her to get what they needed from her, and it was just too much.
I do not think that, because here's the thing with Marilyn. Marilyn was known to drink heavily, and she was also known to pop her own pills. Okay. So it's not to say that she didn't have some mixture in her system already. That could have been she would have had a high tolerance to this crap. She would have had to take multiple of these pills to feel the effects on herself based on how many pills she was taking at the time and chasing them down with champagne. That's widely reported. She would chase them down with champagne. So I think of what it was there is already a mixture in her body. God knows what took place during Dr. Greenson's therapy session with her in her bedroom. And then here comes Robert Kennedy back that's corroborated by multiple witnesses.
Mm-hmm.
And I think in an attempt to subdue her somehow. One person said a theory was a shot underneath the armpit that never would have been found. Okay.
Between the toes, in the hairline.
But I think that in an attempt to subdue her was something to knock her out. I think they added to what was already in her system, creating such a lethal mixture. And I think when the group came back in and was like, holy shit, we've got to save her, they attempted their own thing. And I think just the compounds of it all.
Yeah.
Can I throw a theory?
Exacerbated. Go for it.
I think that they'd already begun the process of subduing her. You can add things to oxygen. I think that by the time the doctor might have given her a shot or something to calm her down, she might have been almost in a compliant. Because really, somebody comes at me with a needle, I'm going to fight you, and I'm going to be screaming, get away from me. But if she had been taking oxygen, I need to calm down here. Just breathe deeply. Just breathe the oxygen. It'll calm you down. There could have been nitrous in there, laughing gas to calm you down, relax you, and she could have been jabbed.
And here's the thing with that, and it's funny that you kind of say that. If you look back on what Marilyn was trying to do at this moment in her life, how pissed off she was at being used yet again, she was ready to go to the press and reveal all and tell all. Had she done so in the way that she was wanting to, she would have brought down the Kennedy administration and clan and their own powers and ambition, the mafia, the FBI, the CIA, Hoover, Dr. Greenson, because she was going to be revealing some crazy fucking shit on his part, and part of the medical community as well. Because they had a very weird therapy or doctor-patient relationship. She got her therapy in his house. She became one of the family members. She was invited to dinners there and would sleep there. And she was like a daughter, if you will, an added household member. Even Joan and Danny Greenson, the children of Dr. Greenson, say that she was welcomed into their house. And they're the ones that say, yeah, she was talking about some things. Joan Greenson is saying that, yeah, she was telling me about dating some guy named the General. And she just knew in her brain that, here I am knowing Joe Blow down the street with a date with him. And she's talking about somebody extremely high up in the freaking government. But those are all the people that she could have potentially brought down with going to the press. You can't have that many people mad at you and something not happen.
And because she was so desired, because she was so connected, she just kind of stumbled in and got way in over her head really fast and died because of it.
She was playing a game she didn't know how to play. She knew how to play to get power. She knew how to play to get the power. She didn't know how to play to win. Because if she would have been playing to win, she would have kept this little diary a secret forever, would never breathe a word about it. Anytime someone mentioned something, she'd go, I don't remember what you said. And she would have played that out. And then she would have slipped it to someone she could have trusted to publish it. That's how you play to win. You don't forecast what's going to happen because the game is a game of secrets.
Yeah.
That's exactly the issue, is that she could play the game. She just didn't know how to beat them.
She didn't know how to win it.
And her fatal flaw was making a direct threat to go public with it. And there's no denying that she was making threats to go public. There's multiple people of her friends that say, she's told me I'm going to come out with this, basically fuck them. Like, screw them. Who the hell do they think I am? I'm Marilyn Monroe. I'm the most popular woman on the planet. She was, don't get me wrong. But to put it in layman's term, and I love her to death, she wrote a fucking check her ass couldn't cash.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That's exactly what it boils down to.
She was one against an army. And that her interest and the army's interest were at odds. She was not going to beat all those people if it wasn't one that got her, another one would have.
Yeah.
Because there were too many people who had too much to lose. And she was that one thread that if you started to pull it, you were going to start unraveling everything.
She knew too much. She was too connected. Like I told you earlier, all these kind of powerful key players came across like this in this web of deceit and lies, and she is right here in the freaking middle of it, you know? She played a key integral part with all of them. And yes, Ken, thank you. She was playing with the big boys. No way to win.
That's
Exactly.
right.
She had her own power. That woman was smart. She knew what she was doing. She knew how to use her sexuality and womanhood and brains and all that stuff to get what she wanted, to get the men that she wanted and get the movie roles that she wanted. I mean, look at all her movie roles. It's nothing but based on her looks and her sex appeal and all that stuff. She knew what she was doing, but she got in with people that knew the game better than she did, knew how to play it a lot smarter than she did. And like I said, I think she wrote a check her ass couldn't cash and opened up her fucking mouth and started blabbing all this stuff.
I think she thought that her celebrity and her fame would keep her safe, which we all know
she couldn't be touched type thing.
Like she's too well known. As long as she's that well known, nobody's going to touch her. Yeah.
Which is a big mistake that a lot of celebrity death scandals, that celebrity has made it. You know what keeps you safe? A camera running on you 24/7 with feeds to where no one knows where it goes. Guess what? That camera's on. What are you going to say? What are you going to do?
But it goes into, I think it plays in a lot about how her early life was for her. I think she got so, I mean, there was this excitement that the most powerful man in the world
was paying attention
to her. And then you have the second most powerful man in the world. But here's the thing, and Shelley, you and I have talked about this, and we both agreed on this. JFK is one thing. Okay, he's one to mess with. Bobby Kennedy is worse.
Yeah.
He was
a cleaner.
Yeah, he was the worst of the two.
Well, and you've also got Sam Giancana thrown in there. You know,
you have to remember now Blake and I got into this on the phone the other night. Here's the deal with the Sam Giancana thing. In the alleged run up to Kennedy getting the nomination and becoming president, there was a rumored agreement that was made that as long as there was a Kennedy in power, that the mob would be left alone.
Yeah.
Now, here comes in RFK, and okay, we got to get him a little job. Well, here he decides his platform is he's going to go after the mob.
That's the first thing he did. Yeah,
that's right. And Hoover, it's very strange because until Bobby goes into his position, Hoover has not messed with the FBI, has not even looked sideways at the mob. Nobody's keeping tabs on the mob. The mob is out of freaking control. Suddenly, here comes Bobby, and they start going after the mob with this vengeance and this vigor. Bobby thought he could beat the mob. So Marilyn to him was a fly shoe. He thought he could beat the mob. So Marilyn was no one. That was an easy fix.
Yeah.
So yes, he was dangerous enough to have that ego that he could defeat the entire mob. Yeah. Marilyn was no problem for him. He was far more dangerous.
Well, it's like they always say, you don't go up against somebody who can actually answer the question, you in what army?
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just true.
The president had too much to lose. The president was way too public. The president was not going to be someone that could publicly decry her in any way. Could not decry her in any way. The president had to stay above it. Bobby didn't quite have as much spotlight. Yes, he was far more dangerous.
Yeah. And I think that's why years later down the road, because there was during all this is when we got a little bit of time, so I'll bring this up. There was also a reporter at this time that was zeroing in very, very, very much on JFK and Marilyn's affairs. She was at the birthday gala that I talked about back in May, the infamous Happy Birthday, Mr. President. Her name is Dorothy. This is going to ring a bell. Her name is Dorothy Kilgallen. We know about Dorothy Kilgallen because Dorothy Kilgallen covered a lot of JFK during the years that she was a reporter at that time in the early 60s. Dorothy Kilgallen was doing a interview or reporting in Dallas after President Kennedy was assassinated and was getting too close to a lot of things, in my opinion, and was mysteriously found dead herself whenever she was getting super close to what it was.
72 hours?
Something along that line.
The passing of the president?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, something along that lines. Well, no,
I think
not of the president. I think it was she was doing some. I'll have to look back up the year, but anyways, because this episode's not about her. But
Yeah,
I'll have
that's
to
true.
look the year up again.
I thought
but,
that she had died in very close succession. Maybe it was sometime after. I'm not sure.
But to me,
Don't get me telling you a lie. My apologies.
To me, what makes a lot of this weird to me is that obviously we know that we were very unsuccessful in the invasion of Cuba. If there was a deal that was struck with the mob to get JFK into the candidacy and presidency, supposedly and allegedly Joe Kennedy got the word that, hey, you didn't get us what you wanted, so we're about to start whacking your kids. Like, that's the words that was used. We're going to start whacking your kids. And it's really freaking weird to me that between 1962 and 1960, when did Bobby Kennedy die? 5 or 8?
Oh,
remember off the top of my head.
Bobby Kennedy, I think that was 68. Yeah, 68,
I believe.
I think. I believe. Hey, I didn't take notes, so I don't have that at my record.
I didn't with dates. Well, I didn't take notes about the assassination of Bobby Kennedy.
No,
obviously, I wasn't alive back then. So
I think it was 68. Don't quote me.
None of us on the screen were alive back then.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. None of us were. But I just find it weird that it's like between 62 and 68. Marilyn, 68. Everybody's saying 68. Marilyn, JFK, Dorothy Kilgallen, and RFK are all killed.
Gone from existence. Left only in the history books.
The question I do have is, I kind of want to wind it back a little bit. You said that she spoke to that director, and he said that she told him something that was so shocking that it would change the world, right? Do we know what she said to him?
No.
Did he ever say anything?
He took it to his grave.
I thought he never heard it. I thought that he said that she set the phone down.
No. What he said to the people asking him the question was, Marilyn told me something shocking, something that's going to one day change the world. That's what he's saying on that phone call, that Marilyn told him something to him that was shocking and would one day change the world. He has never, he took it to his grave. He never revealed what it was.
Is that what she said? I know something shocking that'll one day change the world.
No. What he said, that Marilyn said what she wanted to say, told him what it was, but all he would relay was that it was something shocking and something that would someday change the world.
Okay, Ryan, that's a good question. I had a question about that in a moment, because he said she set the phone down. And of course, my thought is that almost sounds like someone walked in on her conversation and took the phone away before he ever heard what it was.
There's a couple of things during that moment of the phone going silent on him. There is, I found a couple of things that she was either heard a knock at the door. There was a commotion at the front door. There was a couple of different things. So I couldn't ever find anything concrete that gave a reason about why she set the phone down or quit talking. But he said, I found one article that stated that he had said he heard something. Now, whether that was a knock or a commotion or something like that, but she put the phone down to go do something is what it was.
Mm-hmm.
To either answer a door or see.
Hey, hang on a minute. Set it down.
Yeah. And that basically she never picked back up.
But someone had to hang up that phone, because you said that someone called and spoke to Marilyn within 30 minutes after that.
No, that was he was
the last one to talk to her.
He was the last one to talk to her at 9:30 at night, until she called Peter all groggy and slipped into unconsciousness.
So she alleged to have called someone after that. So the phone had to have been hung up at some point.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. It had to have been, at some point it would have been hung up.
But because it wasn't a cell phone, y'all. It had to be taken. You had to get the
on the clicker
cradle. Yeah. The cradle, and you had to set it down there, and you had to wait for it, and then you had to pick it up, and you had to do your dialing, and you were attached by a cord.
It's about 3 of these.
It was attached by a cord, and so you couldn't walk away from the phone. It wasn't like you could walk all over your house. No. You had to stop down. If you had someone at the door, you were going to have to set that phone down. Don't put it back on the cradle. That'll hang it up. You have to leave it there and walk to and do whatever you've got to do. Mm-hmm. So for those of you that are cell phone people and have never seen a rotary phone or an attached phone, if you were really fancy, your mama had one of those cords that you could drag all over the house. It was like that super duper long one that all your friends were jealous if you had it.
Yeah.
So
well, and that's what she had, and it's just everything that pertains to her death, to the story that was being told of the night that she died, nothing adds up. Nothing makes sense to me. The stories change. They go back and forth. It's at midnight. Then it's at 3:30 that they found her body. There's a 4-hour gap that, the police, that there was a waiting for the police to call. A lot of people say they were coming up with a story at that point, to try and figure out that they were moving her from the guest cottage to her own bed, posing her, emptying pill bottles and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, you don't move a body. You don't do that.
No.
I mean, my whole thing is that if they did come in and they did attempt to revive her, and in that process, they lost her, that's one thing. You happen in on a scene, that is taking place. This person's unresponsive. You're attempting to revive them
by any means necessary.
By any means necessary, and you end up losing her. There shouldn't be any type of what am I trying to say?
There's no shame in losing after an valiant effort to try.
Yeah.
Well, also, it's nothing that is unlawful that they've done.
Yeah.
There's nothing that they could go to jail for at that point. They all put forth the effort to try and save her.
Yeah.
It's not like they walked in and they were like, "Oh, she's unconscious. All right, let's go have a beer," and just left her.
Yeah.
I'm adamant at this point. So I will tell you all this, and I know we've kind of touched on this, but it is going to be confirmed for y'all two that I've been talking so much about this. I only had so much time on this podcast, and we know that, and we're still in discussion mode, by the way. I just want to throw this out there. So what I'm getting ready to do is, starting in 2 weeks, I'm going to be releasing mini episodes that are going to be entitled The Marilyn Files. And I'm going to take a walk down Marilyn's life. I'm going to put them on YouTube.
And put them on YouTube.
They are going to be on YouTube and YouTube alone. That's it. So make sure that you're subscribed and following our YouTube page, because that's the only place that they're going to be. But it's going to be the Marilyn Files, and I'm going to take a walk through her life. It's going to be everything from the beginning, through stardom, through rise, through fall, through mental crisis, all the way into her death. And through that, I'm going to go even deeper and deeper into a lot of this stuff. I just wanted to get this out there because this woman does not deserve to live, like I said earlier, to her memory doesn't deserve to live on under the pretense that she committed suicide. Because I don't believe that that's what happened. You have Pat Newcomb in 2019 saying that she doesn't believe that Marilyn committed suicide either. And I'm sorry, but she was there at the scene. She knows what happened. She's not going to say, I guarantee you, she's 92. Why would she say something 60 years later unless there's a deathbed confession that comes later on? I just, that's what I'm adamant about. After reading this, she doesn't deserve that memory from somebody who was so good at what she did. If you really watch the Marilyn movies and watch her career and stuff like that, the woman was talented. And it was her mixture of talent and choices of powerful men that helped her rise so far to the top. So that's my ending on it. At least change it to either homicide or accidental homicide, and go ahead and call the case closed. Everybody's dead. What are you going to do now?
Just check it undetermined. Yeah. That's all you have to do. Check it undetermined.
Yeah. I mean, and then my other question is where the hell did her phone records go? Where are the specimens that came from her body? Where are the tapes? Where are the tapes at? If the FBI and the CIA had her house bugged, then let's listen to them. We can't? Oh, is that because there's something damaging on it? Because we've been told to lie for 60 years? I'm sorry. I'm getting in my pissed off mode now.
Do you think that the case will ever be reopened? Or do you think this is...
No, I do not. Because the case was reopened in 1982, 20 years after her death. And they did it under the pretense on that we need to finally put this thing to rest. And that investigation came to the same conclusion of a probable suicide. However, that investigation is what brought Anthony Summers, and I actually have a picture of him, who brought Anthony Summers into the mix. Now, if you're a Netflix fan, you've probably seen a documentary recently released on Marilyn Monroe back in, I believe it was June, late May or early June, something like that. And it's called the Marilyn Monroe, The Unheard Tapes. It is over his book called Goddess, The Secret Lives of Marilyn Monroe. Now, that book is absolutely fascinating. He went into a very deep dive investigation where he interviewed. He has over 600 hours of interviews, and he talks to everybody from studio execs to Jane Russell, who co-starred with her in Gentlemen Prefer Blondes, to Dr. Greenson's children and wife. And what comes out in that is rather compelling to me. It's very interesting what those that were in her circle or close friends or people who loved her come out and say. And I will say that the documentary itself, I don't agree with this. The documentary itself is kind of being debunked, if you will, which doesn't make sense to me. I found one article where they're trying to debunk it. And I'm not going to mention the name of who it is because it's rather a huge, well-known person in the Maryland world. But I just don't agree with their debunking standards because they have 2 telephone books, address books of Maryland's that basically said none of this could have taken place because those names were not typed up and inserted in the address book that Maryland had. I don't think that you can completely debunk interviews that people are giving where you're hearing their words, talking about all this stuff. Oh, it didn't happen because they're not in her record book.
Well, that documentary tries to dispel the whole conspiracy theory myth, right?
That documentary is centered around exactly what I've been talking about tonight.
Oh, okay. Because I thought it was trying to dispel all of that.
Go. If I can leave y'all with any homework, go and watch Marilyn Monroe, The Unheard Tapes on Netflix, and go and read, if you can get your hands on it, The Final Days of Marilyn Monroe by Donald Wolfe. Both of those are extremely eye-opening. The documentary on Netflix, because he interviews those close to her, her close friends, and all that kind of stuff. The book, The Final Days of Marilyn Monroe by Donald Wolfe, because he goes very, very, very deep into the minutia of the final days. And he kind of covers like what I did in 1962. He goes on from pretty much there, but he covers in depth her autopsy or toxicology report, gives comparison and examples. That's where he's the one who got the number of 47 to 89 Nembutal tablets because they ran it through modern technology in 1990s, that they just ran her toxicology report. And they were like, yeah, they'd have to swallow this many, boom, out popped the numbers. So,
and not a single caplet found in her system.
Not a single capsule found left over in her system. And here's the thing. I'll leave it. I'll tell you this. Sorry, I'm getting all excited. I love talking about Marilyn Monroe, as you can tell. The thing with her toxicology report is that not a single capsule was found, but her levels were so extreme and so high that her body would have only absorbed, I think it was 35% of that amount of level of barbiturates, and left the 65% in whatever digestive state, a stomach, or if there's a theory that it was an enema, or something along that lines, because when you die, digestion ceases. So for her to have swallowed that many capsules, there most definitely would have been something. Those capsules.
Go ahead.
I was going to say those capsules back then were a yellow color. They were called yellow jackets, actually, because of their color. That would have dyed the inside of her stomach. There was none of that to be found.
I think it was perhaps that whenever they did the hot shot into her chest, into her heart, I think it was probably put in there. And then chest compressions were continued to pump it into her system to make sure she died. Just another working theory.
It's a good theory. It's a really good theory
because you can circulate the blood as long as you are doing those chest compressions. You're circulating it.
That's a really good
and then
theory
they have to wait 4 hours to make sure she's good and dead.
True.
Because they wait 4 hours.
That's for the time discrepancy.
So then you're saying that everybody was in together then.
I think that someone higher up, but I don't know if it was a Kennedy, if it was a mafia member, whoever. I think they paid off Green. What's it? Greenson.
Yeah, Greenson. Now sorry, Ryan. Go ahead. Ask your question because I'm gonna talk
about
Greenson for a minute.
I was gonna say, Greenson and Pat. What was Pat's name? Newcomb.
Pat Newcomb.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the housekeeper had all been fired that day.
Well, Dr. Greenson hadn't been fired, no, but allegedly, that's what the disagreement was with Pat, that she was let go, allegedly. And Eunice Murray, it's pretty much out there that, yeah, she was fired. Like her stuff was packed and all that.
We're leaving out a very important detail here about the doctor. Wasn't he recommended by Sinatra?
That's what I was about to say. That's why I'm gonna flip the script with Dr. Green. Let me also throw this in there. I didn't want to go. This will be something I'll cover more in depth in the Maryland files. But Dr. Greenson was Frank Sinatra's psychiatrist as well. Mickey Rudin, who was Marilyn's lawyer, was Frank Sinatra's lawyer as well. Eunice Murray was recommended to Marilyn by Dr. Greenson, as well as Dr. Engelberg was too. Dr. Engelberg, Eunice Murray, and Dr. Greenson all allegedly have or had ties to either communist people or the Communist Party. That they had their own separate FBI and CIA files on those.
Again, at that time, though, you just had to look the wrong direction and you would be tagged that.
I know. That's why I didn't really quite bring a lot of that in with that. But yeah, Pat Newcomb was also a friend of Sinatra's. And I understand that this is back in that time with the Rat Pack, Frank Sinatra, Marilyn Monroe, JFK, RFK. It is this just intertwined, incestuous, if you will, circle power struggle. That she was with the wrong crowd. I mean, I don't want to say it that way. That sounds horrible.
She was the little fly in the center of this great, big, dangerous spider web. And she was the fly that wouldn't quit struggling.
Yeah. Because everybody could use her. And I think that's when it all came crashing down, when she figured out that everybody could use her.
Was using her, yeah.
And was using her. The mob was using her to get dirt on the Kennedys. The Kennedys were using her for sex, for a good time, for a plaything. You know, Hoover was using her to get dirt on the Kennedys as well. And the mob too. You know, so it's just like she was being pulled in 8,000 different directions. That I think she just blew up and fucking was over it. And I think that's why she was cleaning house with Pat Newcomb, with Eunice Murray, with Dr. Greenson, because all these people were recommended to her. You know, all these people had been planted in her life, so to speak. And the other reason why, and I know this doesn't hold a lot of weight, but the other reason why I don't think it was at her own hand, because the woman had so much more to look forward to and to live for.
She saw a studio contract, right?
She just got a brand new $1 million studio contract. She officially became one of the high-ranking women of the day, Elizabeth Taylor.
Which is what she wanted to have happen.
That's exactly what she wanted. She wanted to be... She wanted to be taken seriously.
That was her respect, she aspired to be one of those women with the highest paid women in Hollywood, because that got you respect. That got you the roles you wanted.
It boiled down to the fact that goes back to a Norma Jean side of her. Marilyn wanted just so bad to be good. That was it. If you listen to interviews with Jane Russell and Gentlemen Prefer Blonde, she'd talk about them being on set for 8, 9, 10 hours a day, while the rest of them would go back to the hotel or go get sleep or something like that. Marilyn would go to coach. She would go to her coaching and spend another 3 or 4 hours with her coach and rehearse and get her scenes down. All she wanted was to be good. And when it reflected in her paycheck, that's when she got that newfound kind of confidence. And I think that's when she got a little cocky and was like, all right, you Kennedys.
I'm Marilyn Monroe, damn
Marilyn Monroe, and I just landed $1 million, so I'm going to take you down. And unfortunately, I think she made a threat, and that threat cost her life.
Well, gentlemen.
Man, you
final
did
thoughts on Marilyn?
I was going to say, Blake, I know that you anguished and you researched till your face turned blue. And I think you did a really good job of unraveling this enigma that is Marilyn Monroe.
Or did I think
he gave us a lot more things to think about.
Or did I just tie it all together for you? Because here's the thing. There is the conspiracy of, there's separate conspiracies. The mob, the CIA, Hoover, JFK, RFK. I don't think it was separate conspiracies. I think they were all tied together. I think they all related together. I think it's time to take all the separate conspiracies of Marilyn Monroe and put them together and formulate exactly what happened to her based on the evidence that's out there.
Let's do that this weekend.
The evidence is there. You just got to dig for it. That's all it comes down to. And let me tell you, I'm going to be digging for it in the Marilyn Files whenever I start releasing those on YouTube. So y'all be on the lookout for those.
And I cannot wait. I think that Marilyn is truly one of those ones that's fascinating. You have an icon that has a mystery attached, that has, again, fingers in every pot and every pie of every powerful player in the United States, pretty much at that time. And I think that there's nothing we love more than a good mystery. And there's nothing we love more than a good conspiracy.
Oh,
and just like the mystery of Norma Jean becoming Marilyn Monroe has a mystery that belongs just to her. And hopefully one day the truth will actually be revealed as to what happened to her.
You know what? If I dig far enough, I just feel like I will. I don't think I will go knocking on the Los Angeles District County Clerk's office, be like, "Hi, can I please get the police records? I'll go find them myself." Oh, one other thing before I leave, which I'll delve further into on the Marilyn Files, but I'm going to leave you with this. Just to let you know, there's boxes of Dr. Greenson's at the UCLA library, and you're only allowed to look through about 4 of them. There's 2 that are sealed until the year 2039.
Is that 75 years?
77. 77 years after she died. And the fun part is Becky Altringer that I talked about earlier that interviewed Pat Newcomb, she threatened to take them to court to get them unsealed, and they would not have it. They would not let her unseal them. And the other 4 boxes that she looked in had nothing to do with Marilyn Monroe. So the question becomes, will we find out something in 2039? And if we do, what will it be?
I'm sure we'll do a podcast on it.
I mean, we were supposed to find out like everything about the Kennedy files by now, but they keep resealing those and keep redacting certain things from them. So who knows?
We will see. Well, y'all, we hope y'all enjoyed another week of Everything Vaguely Paranormal. Remember, whatever social media channel you're watching us from, we're across the board. So go make sure you follow us across the board, especially that YouTube channel, because that's the only place you're going to get to see the Marilyn Files that are going to be dropping in 2 weeks. And also, we've got 2 tickets, I believe, left to the Longview Museum investigation this weekend. So if you want to come join us on that, we are almost sold out. Go ahead and go get them bought. And we have quite a good group. We also got
2 left for Old Park.
Tickets left for Old Park as well.
Man.
2 tickets left for Old Park as well, and that one's going to be sold out too. So if you want to join us on Investigation, haven't had a chance to, we've got this weekend, and then we've got October the 8th for Old Park. So you can pick one of those. Our links are up on our Facebook page. That'd be the place to go for those. And Shelly, take it away.
Well, if you want to know what we really talk about, all kinds of crazy things, you can go and become a Patreon member. It's $5 a month. There's no tiers. It's one price for everything, $5. And you can hear our pre-broadcast of all the other fun and interesting stuff that we do. We've got some theories and some new things coming your way. Just go become a member. It'll be where you'll like it just for some of the conversations.
You can go vote on whether I should scry for demons in a toilet or not.
I think that's already been decided. I believe that's going to happen, Ryan. I'm sorry, I'm about to say, take it, Ryan. It's already going to happen for Blake. Blake, you've already lost. So go ahead, Ryan.
I know what you meant. So go please rate and review us on wherever you get your fine podcasts. Also, tell 2 friends and have those friends tell 2 friends. Keep spreading the word. And if you have any questions about anything, you can always ask and send that to, what is that email address, Blake?
The EVPpod@gmail.com. The THEEVPPOD @gmail.com. The EVPpod@gmail.com. You can send us any type of photos that you want, any stories you want. If it's interesting enough, we'll read it on air, with your permission, of course.
Yes, and we do not share anyone else's evidence. If so, we credit them. We do not steal other people's evidence. So if you send us something, we do not post it. If you want us to just take a look, we'll be happy to take a look. So make sure you hit subscribe. Please subscribe.
Well, y'all, for my friends, Miss Shelley Pruitt and Mr. Ryan Roberts, I am Blake Smith, and we will see you next Tuesday.